Greetings, BookTube. It's Loxter here from Loxter Reads again. Yesterday I went to the library again. This time initially for a talk on Jane Austen's 250th anniversary, given by a lady from the Jane Austen Society, whose name I have momentarily forgotten. I should have written it down. It was an interesting talk. And then, of course, I went to the library. So I have another library haul. Steve Donahue does like Brattlebook haul videos every week or so. These I seem to be doing Acton Library book hauls. But I thought I'd go through what I chose and brief to. First up is The Unwritten Order: Hitler's Role in the Final Solution by Peter Longerich. This it's a book I've been meaning to read for ages. In fact, I think I got it out of the library and then never got around to reading it a couple of years ago. One of the things that Holocaust deniers will tell you is that Hitler never. They will try and avoid giving Hitler responsibility for the Holocaust, even though that's ridiculous. This book comes out of some work Longerich did for the trial, the trial that basically ended David Irving's historic career as a pseudo historian by that point, and I'm looking forward to reading that. So there's that. Next up, sorry, coughing down the microphone. Well, not microphone, whatever. Poetry by Heart: A Treasury of Poems to Read Aloud. This is a collection of. It was basically it's a collection of poetry that was put together for. There's a children and a sort of young person's competition where they learn poems and recite them. This was a book they produced in 2014 that gathered together sort of the official poems that you could choose to recite from. It's a good selection. Actually, it's a very good selection. Actually, there's nothing. There's some traditional and ones. You've got things like anyway, I was lack of preparation. But anyway, there was lots of poems in here, and I picked this up because when the Jane Austen talk was being done, she mentioned a place called Alstrop, which is there's a poem by Edward Thomas, whose biography last 5 years of his life biography you saw I got out of the library earlier in last week. That's one of my favourite little poems, just because it's a little poem about nature, the countryside, waiting, patience, whatever. And I remembered that, and I thought, I wouldn't mind reading. That's a poem I wish I'd learnt by heart, and it made me pick this up when I saw it in the library, which was a bit of a wild coincidence, but yeah, you go. Next up is Claire Jackson's Devilland: England Under Siege, 1588 to 1688. This is about basically the period in time where the rest of Europe thought Britain had lost its mind, England had lost its mind, when there were revolutions, reformations, murder. A king was murdered. There was a civil war, Commonwealth. The monarchy was restored, and then the Stuarts were overthrown again in 1688. So I've had this one on my list for a while. I think it was nominated for the Wolfson History Prize a couple of years ago. I think it came out in 2022. So that's another one, fits in with my sort of interest in the English Civil War and other things. Next up, Seamus Heaney by Helen Vendler. I thought while I was doing, didn't realise I had this in the library, and as I'm on a bit of a Seamus Heaney reading thing, I thought a little biography would be worth a read. So there's that. Then we get on. Now, one of the things I always do when I go to the library is I go to the new. They always have a little new section, And I went in there, and there are a couple of good books. There's this from the BBC, The People's War, Untold Stories, Life on the Battlefront and at Home in World War Two. It's a kind of collection of, well, it basically does what it says. Basically in the early 2000s, I'll read this from the thing. In the early 2000s, the BBC launched its biggest oral history project, recording the lives and experiences of the ordinary people who lived through World War Two. It amounted to 47,000 testimonies and over 400 diaries and letters, all of which have remained unexplored in the archives for 20 years until now. So I thought this would be good. It's always interesting to get word of mouth, sort of, or oral history is an important part of history, and sometimes you just want to hear the words from the people themselves, and not from a historian. It's not necessarily any more the truth than the historical truth, but it's a version of the truth, and they're always quite emotional. And then finally, another Second World War book, Max Hastings' Sword, D-Day Trial by Battle. Now, I like Max Hastings as a military historian. I have said before, I think he's got a little bit of all the German army were wonderful, and the British army weren't that great thing going on. That I don't know if he's got over that by this point. That's a problem that a number of military historians suffer from. And whether it's fair or not is moot. I don't think it is. I think the German army, and they were different things, doing different things for different leaders, and they were bound to have different cultures, and they were bound to have different ways of responding. That sometimes I think historians seem to gloss over. The reality, a society has an impact on its military, and on its military leadership, which you can't ignore. And I do sometimes think military historians do. But this is obviously about the events on Sword Beach, and I think it focuses. Yeah, so it says here, in Sword, veteran chronicler of war, Max Hastings explores with extraordinary vividness the actions of the Commando Brigade and Montgomery's 3rd Infantry and 6th Airborne beaches on and around a single beach. He describes their frustrations, hopes, loves and fears through the apparently interminable years of training and preparing in England, then their triumphs and tragedies on the beach belong. Here are the airborne assaults on the Caen Canal Bridge and the Merville Battery, the battles on the shoreline and against German strong points inland, narrated and explained with all the insights that Hastings' decades of study, veterans interviews and new archive research enable him to deploy. So I'm sure this will be interesting. I'm almost tempted to. So that was my library haul. I have almost finished Seamus Feeney's Seeing Things, which I got earlier. I have literally 5 or 6 pages to go. That I will finish today. That pile is due on the 17th of June. So I've now got. Apparently, I can get 25 books out of Acton Library, I discovered, and it doesn't count what I get on Libby. I should never need to buy a book again. So I've now got to work out what I'm going to read, in what order, and at what speed to try and get through everything. Now, you'll notice as well, there is a distinct lack of fiction in all that. So it means probably for this next month or so, I shall be reading mainly non-fiction, which is no problem for me. I like reading non-fiction. Some ways prefer reading it to fiction and always have done. The question is how read. So it's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 books by the 17th of June, which is 30 days of September, April, June, and November. So we've got 3 days of this month left, and then 9, 10, 17 days. So we've got 20 days to read 19 books, which would be a book a day. That is unlikely to happen. There is such a thing as renewing books at a library, so I suspect that might happen. I think I wanted to track. Let's see how this goes. We'll make this a YouTube project. How many of these books will I finish, and in what time period? The fact that, for example, Bury the Chains, which you saw on my last video, has been on the pile for a while, and I've been reading, and I keep renewing, is probably an example of what might go wrong with this. But let's see. As I said, we'll finish seeing things today, and then we'll decide. And obviously, the other one that I'm in progress with is The Eagle and the Heart, which I need to finish. I feel like this is a. I feel like if I finish this quickly, then we're on for a finishing all the books we need to finish. If I finish this slowly, we're in trouble. Particularly as we've got all the big books around to read. Anyway, before I make this all waffly, I forgive the Eric Cantona style collar there. So that's where we are. That's my reading projects for the next month. We shall see. Let's see where we get to. Anyway, have a good day. Enjoy your reading, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye bye.